Now let's get a bit of arts for the Sunday morning. And for the last 4 years, Sydney audiences have been thrilled by Opera Australia's ambitious production staged on Sydney Harbour.
The latest production to be performed under the stars and on a floating stage is Verdi's Aida, an epic tale of love, war and jealousy. Well, for more, we're joined by Artistic Director of Opera Australia, Lyndon Terracini. Good morning.
Good morning, Miriam.
Big
Good morning,
things
Andrew.
are happening out there on the harbour in Sydney. It's been a huge success, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been fantastic.
That's been staged outdoors.
Yeah.
And what better way to do that than to stage Aida?
Exactly. Well, it's, as you know, it's a massive opera, and probably a lot of Sydney-siders have seen this huge head of Nefertiti that's on the harbour at the moment over at Mrs Macquarie's chair. And we had a great rehearsal last night, and they are fantastic costumes. It's the biggest production we've ever staged. It's the biggest production in the company's history. And so there's a tremendous amount of excitement down there on the site. Hundreds and hundreds of people, the orchestra, full chorus, and some really wonderful, wonderful singers, some of the greatest singers in the world.
Just looking at some pictures here of that head, that massive head that's going up there. I mean, this is a big construction project, isn't it?
It's a huge construction site. In fact, up the end of the site, we've got the Northern Terrace, where you can eat right up on the top of that building, and it's one of the most beautiful views in the world. Then there's a terrific restaurant underneath that we call the Platinum Club, where you can have a sit-down three-course meal before the show, take a glass of champagne or a beer or a glass of wine and sit in your seat, look at the Opera House, the Harbour Bridge, the City of Sydney, and the most fabulous show you'll ever see.
Well, it is a spectacular setting, but it's not a controlled environment, is it?
Well, you're referring to the rain. It's always what we dread every year. However, if you have a look at your weather apps, the long-range forecast is fantastic. It's sun, sun and more sun. So after we get through this weekend... You've been doing your work in the weather department as well. Absolutely.
For those who haven't experienced opera at all, if they were to come along to see Aida, particularly in such a spectacular backdrop, what can they expect? Well,
this is particularly for people who've never been to the opera, and in fact, more than 50% of the people who buy tickets to Honda Opera on Sydney Harbour have never been to an Opera Australia performance before. And in Aida, there are the biggest tunes. People will recognise those tunes. Fantastic spectacle. And of course, we live in a visual society, so when the Triumphal March starts and you see a camel train, you see the most spectacular exotic costumes, this huge set and a fantastic lighting display, it's really something special. And at the end of that Triumphal March, to top it all off, there are fireworks.
Lyndon, it's not cheap.
No, it's not cheap, but fortunately...
Well, I mean, cheap as in to put it on, but also obviously you need to recoup some money as well, don't you?
We do. No, look, it's a big, expensive show, but I must say that we were very pleased that on last Tuesday, we passed the total box office that we'd achieved last year. And so we've got another 5 weeks to sell, so we're hoping that if everything goes well, it'll be a fantastic season.
Oh, that's fantastic news, isn't it? Now, Aida, of course, a classic story. People will be somewhat familiar with the music, but Opera Australia also has something in the works that will be brand new, and I'm speaking here about the rabbits. It's an interesting concept, something developed from a children's storybook, which will, I believe, bring together the idea of conquering rabbits versus native marsupials and bring in Kate Miller-Heidke
Very
as well.
Aussie story.
Yes,
it is. It's a totally Australian story. In fact, we premiered it in Perth, but it's coming to the Melbourne Festival later in the year. And, the rabbits, well, they're a metaphor for Europeans coming to Australia. And Kate Miller-Heidke, I commissioned Kate Miller-Heidke to write the music for this opera. And Kate is incredibly talented. And it's fantastic music. It's really beautiful. It appeals to a lot of young people. And when we played it in Perth, on the first night, it was just immediately, everyone in the audience just jumped to their feet and was screaming and applauding. It's a beautiful story, as you mentioned, after the book by John Marsden, with beautiful illustrations by Sean Tan. And so this staged opera pays homage to that book and also to Sean Tan's beautiful illustrations. And it's a heartbreaking story too, but also, it's an important story for Australians to know and for us to tell. And the way it's told through Kate's music, and she also sings in the show, is really, really beautiful, and people have responded tremendously to it.
I guess this in part is also an answer to many of those critics who say you don't put on or perform contemporary adaptations, you go for the classics. But are you at times torn between those classic operas that everyone loves and trying something new.
Well, yeah, we are. I mean, it's it's an interesting thing that people say, oh, you know, I don't want to see Madame Butterfly anymore. But we're running Madame Butterfly in the theatre at the moment, and every night it's full. We'll play to 30,000 people just in this season of Madame Butterfly, because there are so many people coming to Opera Australia now that have never seen those pieces. And so it's important for us to be able to show people those fabulous operas, as well as doing things like The Rabbits, which is for a new and different audience, and I guess a younger audience. And when you have someone like Kate, who's writing the music and singing it, and also too because it's such an important Australian story to tell, then I think Australians are really responding to that as well. So it's a mixture of people seeing these extraordinary pieces for the first time and you know, thinking, my God, this is such an amazing experience, and then also realising that not all operas were written by Italian composers. There are operas being written by Australian composers that have a voice that connects to a 21st century public.
And interestingly, that we will also have Indigenous voices performing in The Rabbit.
That's exactly right, and that's one of one of the terrific things about it. Indigenous singers on stage in The Rabbits telling their side of the story, and Europeans telling their version of the story. And when you have those things together, and we had a fantastic rehearsal period, wonderful casts, it's so wonderful to be in the room. You know, it's heartbreaking, it's exciting, it's all those things that you want opera to be, but told by Australians in a very Australian way.
Well, Lyndon Terracini, they look ambitious, but they look fabulous. Thanks
Good.
so much.
Thanks,
Thank
Andrew.
you.
Thank you, Miriam.